Hi, I'm Kevin Treeple from Willoughby, Ohio. I play at Briardale Golf Course. Welcome to Golf Smarter.
Hi, this is Douglas Graham from Dayton, Tennessee, and I play at Tennessee Hills Golf Course. This is Golf Smarter number 1018.
A good way to wrap up what flow is and how to fall into it is relentless acceptance. I think the greatest sin as it relates to performance psychology in the game of golf is allowing one swing to impact multiple, one situation to impact multiple, one bad bounce to impact multiple. We play an imperfect game in imperfect air on imperfect surfaces. If we don't have an acceptance attitude, it's going to be a little harder than it should be. And I will say that maybe some of your listeners, it takes time. If you have the attitude of acceptance tomorrow, there's still going to be frustration. There's still going to be headwinds. There's still going to be difficulties. But in time, it's more or less a rationalization that this is the better path. In golf context, mental toughness really is a rationalization that this is the best path. I'm going to choose not to respond to this in a highly emotional state because I know that a highly emotional state is going to impact the next, maybe even impacts one after that.
Watch how your superpowers soar in a mindless state with performance coach Jon Schram.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, John.
Fred, how are we doing?
Doing great. I'm interested in having this conversation. I'm always interested in having a conversation with somebody who has studied and is putting the flow state, the mental game into use at new levels. And you reached out to me, and I really appreciate that. But you have a fascinating golf history, which I want to go first, so we establish that credibility. I recently had someone reach out to me that wanted to talk about the mental game, but they didn't want to talk about golf. And I said, sorry, don't want to interview you if you don't want to talk about golf. You just want to talk about corporate heads being, smarter. No, I don't care. So let's start with your golf journey, which brought you to where we are going to discuss more.
Sure. Yeah, Fred, thank you so much for having me. I started golf. I was bit by the bug. I believe it about 4 or 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
Uncle was heavily into golf. Nobody in my family outside of my uncle was into golf. We would visit him once a year for about a week, and that was just my golf week for 2 or 3 years. And it's just one of those things where you don't see a ton of them here and there. I think it's popping up back into the game, but just a little pitch and putt. Maybe 18, 50 to 60-yard holes. And that's where I fell in love with the game. I could not get away from it in a way that I think, at 6 or 7, my parents were, okay, well, if that's how you want to spend your time, go for it. Let's do it. Similar story as many, getting dropped off at 6, 7 a.m., not getting picked up till 6, 7 p.m. At a small golf course called Raccoon Run, Warsaw, Indiana, over in Northeast Indiana. And very fortunate there. The guy that owned the place actually played the tour. He played 10 years in Asia, a couple of years in Europe, and then maybe 2 years here on the tour in the U.S. Very tight with Payne Stewart. His name was Denny Hepler. It's actually, I think, a pallbearer in the funeral there, but he really cut his teeth in Asia with Payne, and it's so many stories. But as it related to me, as it related to so many of the juniors there, we were able to get, all of these lessons, all of these stories, all of these, he knew it. He already played it. He'd done it. So we had this great role model to look up to for, 10, 12 years, where I started competitive golf at 7, in accordance with many other juniors, just, I want the tour. I want to play at that high level. I want to play at the highest level I can handle. Pursued it rather fervently, was challenged by a high school coach to just say, hey, how bad do you want it? Let's push it. And all the way up until about 18 years old, took it 6, 7, 8-hour days at the golf course. Really, that was fun. It was just fun. It never was anything but fun. Late in my AJGA career, late in my junior career, things started turning. It really started to get to a point where I was pursuing the idea of, okay, if this is going to happen, This is going to happen. This is going to happen. Nerves, anxiety, fear, etc. Maybe even a little depression kind of hit. I was able to sign with a mid-major at Ball State. I stayed there for 3 months, transferred out. Nerves, anxiety was too much to sleep, too much to bear, too much to eat, too much to do anything. Really turned into a dark period, at least in my life. But it was one of those things that taught me a lesson of, okay, I'm putting all this effort into something I love so much. How can I hate it? And, it was in that moment that I realized, okay, psychology is something that I need to invest my time in. I didn't realize it'd be a career at that point. But I was able to sit down with Dr. Bob Winters for a few sessions, and I think
we've had him on the show multiple times. Yeah,
great resource. He's been an encouragement all the way throughout this experience for me. And in that moment, I realized, okay, I think I know what I want to do now. I still love competing. I play at the highest levels I possibly can. Was fortunate enough to make the U.S. Mid-Am last year. And a good old 80-77 was all I could muster, but I just enjoyed being there. My perspective is completely in a different light, but golf has always been kind of the greatest joy and the greatest pain in that sense. And I realized during my experiences at Ball State, during my experiences in college golf, that I think a lot of athletes go through that. In golf and many other sports, you put in thousands of hours of your childhood, really, in hopes of, okay, am I good enough, right? So in 2020, March 2020, actually, right when COVID hit, I decided to start a PhD. I started studying flow state. That is kind of my expertise currently. But it's been a joy to help athletes in similar lights. Many of them in a different place than I was, is still enjoying it to a sense. But this game has brought me so much joy and so much passion that there's no way I can leave it.
Incredible story. Thank you. And I appreciate your honesty and your openness to be able to discuss it. When you were playing at your best, before you got to college and you were really obsessed with the whole thing, at what point did you get to start recognizing that you were crossing over into a dark side, if we can call it that?
Yeah.
And that fear and anxiety and where it was starting to creep in. Was it your golf game that was prompting that?
It was the scale at home. I was losing 10 pounds every tournament that I played in. And I think at that point, I knew that it was intense. I knew that it was something that I cared about. I think as I had conversation in groups with guys that I admired, or at least guys that I still could beat up on the golf course, I'm like, are you guys feeling this? Are you guys not sleeping? Are you guys not eating? And now that I'm tight with several guys that are playing the tours, like, okay, there's a different mentality. There's an easier mentality. There's a little bit of a view on the sport, a view on the game that is a little different than maybe I had in the moment.
Ooh. And were you losing weight because of the anxiety of performance anxiety of playing competitively?
Yeah, I think we all have seasons of life where we have big days, right? We all have, whether it's related to the game, whether it's related to life, we all have moments where we're just like, I'm not sure if I can keep this down. I'm not sure if I can keep a full meal with me, right? In those moments, I think when it got really dark, it really was just, okay, I know I'm not going to sleep tonight. I know I'm not going to eat tonight. I'm going to be lucky if a granola bar gets down. But it was still worth it. It was still worth to get out there and just try my best. And in that moment, the results were still there. But I think at some point you just start breaking down.
Why was it worth it then?
Game. I love the competition and I love what I built. And I think when you talk to the very best performers, at least in our game, I think there are tremendous, there are pieces of joy, pieces of gratitude they get from the game in the sense of, at least for me, maybe when I'm really tight, when I'm really working on it, 56-yard pitch, like I can hit it 56. If it's 118, I can hit it 118. I can hit that little draw, hit that little cut. That was the piece for me where I'm like, okay, I have really good control of this golf ball. I really, really enjoy that. But I think when the lights turn on, there's a very different experience there.
Mm.
And that's at least on the psych side. Now, for what I do, um, there's tremendous amounts of joy that I take from being able to get a performer, whether it's any of my golf guys or any of my poker guys, just in a, it might be one sentence that gives them kind of the right perspective to be there. I really enjoyed the grind of it, but at the same time, I get just as much joy watching individuals that I'm helping.
Obviously, with losing weight at every tournament, losing 10 pounds, coming up for every tournament, it it was visually obvious. But what were your parents observing in you, and how did they handle it? Watching, the anxiety just take control of you.
They were still very supportive of John. You've invested so much, to be very honest, and now I understand they were investing a lot as well. Just for me to be out there, I was mowing 20 yards a week just to be able to afford to be out in the HAGA. So we've already made the investment. Let's just go out and try, right? I think when it came to a head, when I did transfer, there was a little bit more at home that was just, okay, you're really struggling. And they understood that. I've been very fortunate to have two very supportive parents and understanding that, there is a third rail here that you can touch that might be a little much.
We got a sense of how your parents were reacting to what you were going through. How about your coaches? Where were they? Was anybody pushing you, or were you pushing yourself?
I think it was more an internal thing. I
Mm-hmm.
really had a lot of support. And I think throughout, as I mentioned, Denny, on the front end there of just kind of a very direct, very solid. He skated through his time at Ball State. He transferred to FSU, Florida State, and then I think he got status right after that. Very simple, very straightforward. He was one of the best ball strikers, really, I believe, in that day. He was very tight with pain, so he had a lot of time really
Sure.
playing with the best of that time. Um, so all things being said, I really had a lot of support from these coaches. I will say in high school, my coach, Ben Barkey at Warsaw, very much understood the emotion, very much understood where I was trying to go, very much understood kind of the whole situation. I'll say this. I think you can see high level coaching come out in an improper way, or at least being pushed. I never felt that. I think
Mm.
I was very fortunate to sign with Ball State and somebody there that was very supportive. I ended up transferring to back to Grace College, basically home. Had a lot of support there as well. But to answer your question, it really was an internal thing because, while it is the greatest pain, it is the greatest joy. And I was just kind of, let's keep pushing, right?
I guess. I mean, if where was your head at any point? Did you go, I'm out, I'm done, I can't do this anymore?
I think the stats say that if you can win 3% on tour, you're in the Hall of Fame. And I think though that 3%, whether it was a win or a contention, really was the payoff. I think that frankly that might be it. Uh, Currently now I have tremendous appreciation for the architecture of the game and just what it is, and also the competitiveness of even the mid-am level. You have some guys that they work 9 to 5, but holy cow, like if you really had them do a handicap, they're plus sevens. I'm just fascinated with performance, and I think
Mhm.
where all of this has led, at least professionally in my career, I'm just fascinated with performance. I'm fascinated with individuals that have the ability to put in the work to get good enough to actually test themselves, whether it's state or even national levels. Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's what have you built and what can you try to show off today. And I think full circle, that's what kept me coming back.
So coming back to performance, at what point in your performance did you recognize that you were struggling internally and that it was impacting your game? Where did you see it?
I think that's where it's so difficult. It wasn't impacting my performance.
Huh.
I still was, I was so distraught. Let's just say that. I think at the end of the day, it's just a game, right? To us, it's much more than that, right? But
Sure.
um, I wrote a letter to Dr. Rotella just explaining what I was feeling. No more than 2 days later, I got a call from a Virginia random phone, and it was him. We chatted for about
Wow.
an hour, and it was just like, okay, well, that's special, right? But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he did say, he's like, okay, you're a gamer. Like, he knows a lot of guys that suffer in the hotel room, but when they're at least warming up on the range, or they at least have something to control on that first tee, they do calm down. And I have felt that, at least in my studies, I've found that, you know, falling into flow, falling into the zone, that is a place of ultimate control. So I will say, I think even beyond that 3% victory, the 3% win, the 3% success, I think having that control over something I've built, at least when it counts, is really rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did it present itself during your round, or did it not? It was just pre and post round that you were struggling,
Pre and
and when
post,
you were
yeah.
yeah, and but well, when you were playing golf, you were totally in it.
Yeah, pre and post. Between the first tee and the 18th green, there might be the classic, we call it arousal, at least. Stay away from anxiety, because that kind of has a negative connotation. When you're up, when you're ready, when you're in a state that is a little elevated, calling it higher arousal, um, I was just ready. I think most great golfers in those moments understands what takes them to the very best, and they're able to channel that. Um, but at least for me, and I think at least in Rotella's terms, he's like, yeah, there's a lot of guys out there. And I think, without naming too many names, some very large, like, big time guys. He was like, hey, I have examples. I'm not entirely sure if I could share exactly the names, but he basically in 2013, 2014 listed five of maybe the top 30 in the world. He's like, these individuals off the course, they're not sleeping, they're not eating, that they're just not. They're in the same category as you.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Can't name names, huh?
I I don't
I don't think you should. I think it's. I don't want
I
to push on that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
not
one of those
appropriate.
where I think I just want to remain his trust, but
Sure.
also they're not relevant on tour anymore. So I don't know.
Okay. Okay. All right. So now you've decided that as we progress here, you're in college and you're really struggling pre and post round, but you're totally locked in when you're playing. Um, did you reach the flow state when you were playing? Did you find times that and rounds or moments?
Hmm.
And to me, I guess with flow state, it's all reflective. It's not like, hey, I'm in the flow state right now. Right?
Yeah,
You can't, it
yeah,
doesn't work. You look back and went, oh, I was really locked in there.
yeah, yeah. There's without being braggadocious, there's one
Oh, be
moment that I would. Okay,
braggadocious.
okay.
You're here. This
Uh,
is your soapbox. Come on.
okay. It was one of our bigger tournaments in high school, basically the tournament to get into your state tournament. It's called regional. And 4 or 5 holes left, I was told by my coach, it's like, hey, no more mistakes, and we're going to make it. I've always been on a really solid,
Ooh.
I've always been on a really solid team. And I've been lucky enough to get to that state final. Really know through not through my doing, but through a couple of really great players that I got to play with. But about 4 holes left, I was told that, you know, gave myself three really good looks, no birdies, even through those three. And my coach comes up, he's like, okay, John, 18 here is a straightaway 560. He's not telling me this, but he's like, all he said was eagle or we lose. And I'm like, Cool. Awesome.
That's a tremendous amount of pressure during a round, I would think.
It
It's
was,
like
but
looking at your scorecard when you're playing. It's like, all I need is 2 more pars and I have my best round ever.
yeah.
And you have 2 quadruple bogeys. Right.
I, in hindsight, I think it was great coaching because I never really would have strategically gone for it. If you understand, like you play a hole differently if you know that there is something that needs to happen. But I only reference it because it is the deepest I've ever gotten. I have had a few really good rounds, but at least the people that I've interviewed have had, most of the clients that I have that are D1, 2 of them have 58s, 58 and a 59. And I just like, okay, give me 3 hours on that. I want to hear everything about it. But basically I got over the ball and everything just disappeared. I got over it and I do not remember, you know, all I remember is essentially looking up and seeing a tight little draw that went out there. And then I got over a ball at 209. I knew it was a little juiced up, so I hit 6 iron. Don't remember it. And then all of a sudden, I have
You don't remember the ball flight. You don't remember striking it. You just know that you had a 6 iron in your hand.
I got over the ball. I remember taking it back. I don't remember anything until seeing the ball flight, basically. Wow. And then you get over this 20-footer, and high school golf in Indiana, you have high school Indiana basketball. You have 7,000 people showing up for these small basketball games. There's really nobody watching us. But for some reason, there's like 4 or 5 deep for 150 yards. I think everybody was just waiting. But yeah, I had a 20-footer that really, there's no way that I can explain it outside of this precognition of just no matter what stroke I put on this, it's probably going to go in. And, I don't remember hitting the putt. I just remember seeing the ball skitter towards the hole and just it went in, right? That's just kind of how flow happens sometimes. And, one of the 9, so Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, it's kind of a difficult last name to say. He's coined the term flow basically in the 70s and 80s. And he does talk about in one of the prime characteristics of what flow is, it's more or less a transformation of time, loss of self-consciousness. And if you're really down there, the pieces of the action that you know how to complete, whether it's in the context of golf, sending a golf ball somewhere, context of basketball, Steph Curry, what he can do. Really, there's no need for much rationalization because you've already done it. You know how to do it. And it's just full trust in the moment in your ability to do it. So I reference that because, frankly, I don't remember it. And that's really the only time I've blacked out. Most individuals that I do interview, at least for this study, have reported times where, okay, there's kind of a misunderstanding of timing. Ball slows down, ball speeds up. If you're a batter at the plate, ball slows down. Tennis, returning a serve that's 120 miles an hour, ball slows down a little bit. There's something about the state that really can slow and quicken time, depending on the what you're doing.
So did you eagle the hole?
It did go in, yeah.
All right, let's bring it back to us. Okay. I mean, I know that this is a fascinating story and I really appreciate your honesty with this. But this podcast is how are we going to help the recreational golfer, the competitive golfer, and some golf instructors, but how do we help them understand that it's possible to get into a flow state? It's possible to release the anxiety and perform better. What is your approach? Where do you start with that?
I initially start by interviewing. If it's a client, if it's a friend that's just trying to figure this out, I want to know the nitty gritty, the detail, the thought, the emotion, the feeling of what your best performance has been. Ideally, it's within the last few months, just something that we can recall accurately. I want to know the ingredients of success for you. How do you feel? How do you think? How do you really, are you high level emotion, low level emotion? Were you having fun? Are you scared? All of that. With individuals that might have other professional obligations, and we're still talking golf, I'll ask, hey, if you were an executive one point, take me through a deal talk, take me through negotiation, take me through a time where you're in front of a lot of people, take me through, complex decision making that you've been able to just, right? Flow exists in all of our professional endeavor. Really, if you do it a lot, it exists in your life. If you have gone on any road trip that's north of 120 miles, if I asked you what happened on mile 82, most likely you couldn't tell me really where that is or what's going on, or the dog that was barking in the corner of the road, or the deer that may have hopped out at you. You might remember if the deer hopped out, but for the most part, you're in this flow that is just there. You have trust in your ability to operate the vehicle there. Golf is really no different, except it's quite a bit more precise. And I think that's where we get tripped up on. So really, my first question more or less is, okay, tell me about this 9 holes that you just kind of went down there. You know that it was different. What was the quality of that? The next step beyond that, I'm going to ask, okay, well, tell me about last week. Tell me about last month, the last few times you've been out, the average or even the bad. And, in that conversation, in that interview, I'm kind of able to, dictate, okay, this was there, being in the bad performance or the average performance. This was here in the great performance. What are some of the difference? What are some of the qualities that might be in both buckets, but what's the difference between the two? And then really from there, second and third base of what we do is more or less building a process to try to feed those buckets that really have figured it out.
So is your goal to get a better understanding in your studies and your PhD dissertation? Are you trying to get a better understanding of how people get there, or are you trying to get to a place where you can assist us in getting there?
I think the study, or at least the exercise that I'm going through currently, is to better describe what it is. So I believe it was in 2012 and 2015, there were 2 pretty large studies that came out that basically said, okay, my zone or my flow is going to be very different than Fred's flow, and very different than Steph Curry's flow, and very different than Phil and Tiger, etc. It's a very unique, tied to personality. Maybe not the personality that you might think of: extroverted, introverted, friendly, not friendly, but personality is more or less a descriptor of just my difference to you, right? At the end of the day, it's describing it better. Throughout my coaching, consulting, moving forward with that, my goal is to try to help as many types of golfer or very types of performer as I can. But the study itself is just describing.
I see. But I find it interesting that you want to bring your subject away from the golf course into different environments. I completely understand. Like, the driving analogy is phenomenal. It's like, oh, okay, I get that. And golf can be that way as well. I think that I have had rounds where, when I look back on them, like, oh, that's the flow state. Like, I don't remember, it was just happening. I wasn't thinking about it. It was just there, and it just felt right. And I didn't try to analyze it at the time, because I guess if you try to, hey, I'm in the flow, if you try to do that, you're going to just fall right out of it. I better not screw up this next shot.
Certainly. I would even equate it, at least in your experience, being just over 1,000 podcasts at this point, listening back to your podcasts, listening back to perhaps a guest, going down a line of thought to where you may have not expected it, going down a line of thought where you're like, okay, where am I going to go now? Or what is the question I'm going to ask now? And just hearing yourself respond with the answer, like maybe even the textbook question that is up next. You might not remember making that decision. I call that flow as well. I think that is your zone, because you have repetition in it.
Right. Completely honest. Sometimes that I listen to the interview, I edit the interview. Not a lot of editing; it's just tightening things up and whatnot to make it publishable. But occasionally I'll listen back to an episode, right? Just to check how things, and I hear things in it that I never heard when we were having the conversation initially. Because I'm looking, as we're having this conversation, I'm looking for doors opening up for the next question. I'm looking for opportunities to create the next question. And sometimes, obviously, and sometimes I miss what the person's point is like, oh, well, how did I possibly miss that? Yeah. So I didn't want to make this about my doing interviews. I do want to make it more about how the average golfer can use to get into the focus and stay without questioning, without rehashing that last shot that you didn't like, and staying focused on the next shot without thinking about the mechanics of it, because that really is that is the bomb that's gonna explode. If you start thinking about your mechanics, you're gonna be in big trouble, right?
I think the illustration that I use that is probably been most relatable is if I'm in the room with somebody, I'll have a little red rubber ball, and I'll toss that rubber ball at them. I'll have them toss it back. We might toss it back and forth without me even giving any prompt whatsoever. And after a few tosses, I'll get the rubber ball back, and I'll essentially ask, what about your ability, or what about that movement were you questioning? What about that moment did you have trust in? Why did you think that that release point with that tempo, with that speed is going to be perfect? Why? How did you assume that? How did you trust that? Now, that is a much more simple, much less complex movement than any golf movement, even a 2-foot putt, right? It's always going to be tricky for us in some contexts. My best illustration for that is more or less, if you're so focused on the target and you understand that you have a relative ability to send a ball in that direction, why are we exerting so much more of a mental effort? Why are we exerting more mental energy to this move when I've done it a few thousand times, you've done it a few thousand times? Every single person that is trying to get help with their golf swing or their golf game, they've done it enough to ask the question. So I have a belief that, we've invested a lot of time, we've invested a lot of energy into building, whether it's this, more or less a brain pathway, or at least a pattern that we're able to send something, we're able to swing in a relatively precise manner to send something to a very distinct and small target. That level of precision usually is not going to be friendly to overanalysis. And I, this is another special thing about flow. I believe it was late 2000s, early 2010s that they started talking about the physiological nature of what flow actually is, what happens. The prefrontal shuts down. We still have the same energy budget. We still have this budget that our brain is operating with, right? Even though the prefrontal, which is complex decision making, shuts down, we have this excess energy that essentially is able to go through that back 2/3. And without getting into the nitty gritty, because frankly, I don't have the physiological knowledge to actually quote all this, but that extra power really turns on a bit of a Superman in us. Because at the end of the day, if you ever have any time on SAM or TrackMan or any of the more or less the launch monitors, any of that data, you'll know that this is a very precise game. And if you are accustomed to this 2-yard draw, it means that most likely that face is just a little open, maybe 0.5 degree to 2.5 degrees. It means that your path is either relatively flat or maybe coming in 0.5 into out. That's a very precise pattern that we're able to hit time in and time out. So as I interview individuals with flow, if I interview, the topic of your best round ever, there isn't a lot of thought, but how can that be? There's still a presence of a very precise movement.
You said turn on Superman. I want to know what you mean by that and how we can do it.
Most studies indicate that focus has to be external. I think that's rather obvious, at least when we describe that in the golf context. If I'm thinking about my shoulder, I think about rotation. I'm thinking about moving onto that left foot, that right foot if you're left-handed. It's probably not a great thing. I, at least in the interviews that I've done, there can be one feel or one swing thought that, okay, we can squeak through that. That's great. I'm coaching to try to take these people to very elite levels or trying to take them into, the elite version of themselves. I still think that the swing thought is a bit of a band-aid. I think that if we're able to operate just as we are in the very best moments of our golf game, there tends to be mindlessness. Now, with it's unique. It could be one swing thought, it could be one feel, but for the most part, I really want individuals to take a look at, okay, if I'm on the range getting ready for a round, I'm getting warmed up, but also the intention of your warm up towards the end really should be there's a target out there at 150 yards. I'm just going to get over the ball with my express interest, my only thought being the target. Because we really are only able to think about one thing at one time. And the intention, or at least the presence of that last thought right before you pull the trigger, usually is kind of the dictator of what's happening. The subconscious really can't understand negatives or no's. So if I'm sitting over and, a Cape style par 3, you see a lot of those with Pete Dye where there's just this water line that's going kind of meandering to the right or meandering to the left. For some reason, if we do hit in the water, relatively good players will hit it in the water right on that edge, right? If they're struggling with the thought of do not go here, the subconscious can really only understand the essence of here. What is do not go in the water? Oh, water, right? I think it also has come out in interviews that I've had with really, really talented individuals that are able to play professionally. For the most part, their intention, the clarity of their thought, is the dictator for pretty much everything. Outside of humidity, heat, wind change, getting the wrong number in that sense, they don't tend to miss. They're professionals, right? The only real large mistake that you'll see is maybe a wrestling with thought at the end, right before we're pulling the trigger.
Keep going.
We'll keep going. Okay.
Yes.
Uh,
We're on to
so
something here.
yeah, at the end of the day, I think with your viewers, your listeners, if they really want to fall into the flow or at least experience one of their better performances, I would say first, take note on what has already happened. What's the essence of me at my best, right? Number two, when we're warming up, I would take a look at what can we do in a mindless sense. If I'm getting over the ball, what's the result when my intention, my focus is just that target? Whether it's a 2-yard cut, 5-yard cut, a nasty shot to the right, nasty shot to the left, let yourself just give your subconscious the wheel of, okay, take control of this. At the end of the day, I do believe that no matter what level we play at, if we're confident in our ability to send it to hopefully a good destination, we're able to play relatively unfettered golf, whatever level it is. So I always like to visualize heavily behind the ball. I like to see the shot tracker just as we see on CBS or on Golf Channel. I want to see that. And if I'm on the greens, I want to see that ball roll on that track right before I hit it. Jack Nicklaus always said that his warm-ups were basically to understand who did I bring today? Did I bring the 2-yard cut? Did I bring the 3-yard cut? Did I bring the 1-yard draw? Basically, he'd say, okay, I brought the 2-yard cut today. I'm going to go dance with the 2-yard cut. And he would stay committed to that shot. But I can almost guarantee you the essence of Nicklaus's thought was, where am I going with this? I'm a professional. I can send it to the direction or the distance that is required. The focus must be there. So for your viewers that have played basketball or any target-oriented game, if I'm at a dartboard, I'm focusing on that triple 20. I'm probably, if you're really good at darts, you're probably focusing on a portion of that triple 20. If you're really, really good at basketball, you're probably focusing on that half-inch front piece of the rim. You're not focused on anything internal. Why on earth will we focus internal in golf?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we recently had Josh Zander on
Mm.
a couple months ago, and do you know Josh? Do you know who he
Mhm.
is? Oh, okay. And I found this quote that I presented to him, and it says, instead of focusing on 22% of your game that isn't going right, take the glass half full approach and
Yeah.
appreciate 78% of the game that's working for you that day,
Yes.
and
Yes.
have the awareness to play towards your strengths.
Right. That's great.
And yeah, I mean, I think that you may have come up with the title of this episode about what can we achieve in a mindless state.
Mm.
You know, how
I
far
think
can we go?
the key in that mindless state is uh, walking into the ball completely agnostic to what's happened before, what's happened, what hopefully is happening in front, right? I think at the end of the day, we play a game that is rather drawn out. If you play competitively, you're going to have to more or less be on the ball for 48 or 54 hours. Yes, you might be in the hotel room, you might be at the restaurant, etc. But when you're on the golf course, you have to be locked in. It's going to be 4.5 hours of that. You do that a few times in a row. A lot of scarring, a lot of emotion, a lot of intensity can build up. But I
Mm,
think at the end of the day, flow is relatively agnostic to emotion. When we're operating at our very best, it's a bit of an emotionless process until that final putt drops. The car analogy, even really talking to clients about their professional endeavors. When they're succeeding, when they're doing well, when they're getting things done, it's just business as usual. It's really not something that is an abnormal roller coaster of events. That's not how you run a business. That's not how you lead people. You have to lead people through consistency, relentless consistency. I think at the end of the day with golf, it it is the ultimate challenge on staying more or less agnostic emotionally. As it's so precise, we will have misses, and yeah, please don't quote me, but it was a legend of the game. I think it was Hogan or Hagen that said basically he budgeted 4 bad swings into a round. Every single round, he budgeted the fact that I am completely in acceptance of 4 essentially gimmies. It's not that he's rehitting or anything, but he essentially said, "Hey, if I make a bad swing, we're just chalk it up. Cops are doing business, right?" And you know, any of those guys that made a name for themselves back in the day, relentlessly incredible ball strikers. They just don't really miss. And for that kind of player to say, you know what, there are 4 times I'm going to give myself grace. Every single round, I'm going to give myself grace 4 times. So I think it's kind of looking in the mirror at whatever stage you're at. If you're a competitive, tour pro, if you're a recreational player, if you're a mid-am, if you're a college player, probably more than 4 times you're going to let yourself down, right?
yeah, you definitely need to budget a little bit more than four.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for the people that I play with and at my level, it's like budget for one per hole,
Yeah.
and then and be nice to yourself.
Yeah. I think the maybe a good way to wrap up what flow is and how to fall into it is relentless acceptance. Because I think the greatest sin as it relates to performance psychology in the game of golf is allowing one swing to impact multiple, one situation to impact multiple, one bad bounce to impact multiple. We play an imperfect game in imperfect air on imperfect surfaces. So if we don't have an acceptance attitude, it's going to be a little harder than it should be. And I will say that maybe some of your listeners, it takes time over time. If you have the attitude of acceptance tomorrow, there's still going to be frustration. There's still going to be headwinds. There's still going to be difficulties. But in time, it's more or less a rationalization that this is the better path. I always like to say that in certain contexts, or at least in golf contexts, that mental toughness really is a rationalization that this is the best path. I'm going to choose not to respond to this in a highly emotional state because I know that a highly emotional state is going to impact the next. maybe even impacts one after that. So I think at the end of the day, flow is all about relentless consistency and relentless acceptance.
Wow. I got to write that one down. And acceptance. And I love the line, flow is agnostic to emotion. That's really powerful stuff. Maybe that's the title of this episode. I don't know. So are you publishing your findings and your work online? How do we learn more about what you're doing, Jon?
Late May, early June, I'll have it available on my web.
2025.
2025, yes. 2025.
Yeah, it's a podcast. We have to say that.
Still haven't gotten used to that. Yeah. In short order, I'm going to have some interviews that will be rather interesting. I do believe that a lot of the commentary there is going to be a little bit more academic, but I'm going to try to kind of more or less summarize it in a readable fashion and have that available on my website probably late June, early July at that point. I can't say that I'm writing anything currently. I'm mainly working with clients currently. But yeah, I hope to get some more information about the findings, because I do believe that in its individual nature, it is really, it's still at this point, academia is still kind of scratched their head. It's okay, we know that this is here, but we can't really describe what it is and why is it, or how do I experience it, or how does somebody else experience it. So hoping to bring a little bit more clarity to that. But as it relates to golf, I just hope to help individuals shoot some lower scores here soon.
Well, I really appreciate the journey that we took with you and how we started out for your golf journey and then brought it to your studies and your thesis. Really fascinating. And thank you and best of luck, man. And let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Fred.